This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Hello, world, and welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. Today's sponsor is A2 Hosting. I've been using A2 Hosting solid state hosting solutions for our website at geekleader.com for many years now, and absolutely love their support, their service, and all the features that you get. You get access to cPanel. You get all of the things that you can imagine for a great WordPress experience, including their A2 optimized WordPress, which does extra security checks, extra lockdown. You can lock down your editor file so you can't edit anything inside there. You get alerts whenever there are file changes that are done. You can also do automatic updates, backups, and more with A2 Hosting. So highly recommend it. Go to geekleader.com/A2 to get more information and to sign up for their solid state turbocharged speed hosting today. Again, that's geekleader.com/A2. All right, Geek Leaders. Today I'm honored to have Jeffrey Deckman on the show. He is the author of Developing a Conscious Leadership Mindset for the 21st Century. He's also, which is a Amazon bestseller in the occupational and organizational psychology category. He's also a Stevie Award winner for innovation, which we're going to talk about that a little bit too. But we're going to talk about leadership and how that makes us and how we can become better leaders, especially in the tech space and all the things that are changing today, which is going to be pretty cool. Anyway, Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today and why leadership has kind of been one of those things that drives you.
Yeah, I tell people I'm kind of an accidental leader. I started my career in the cable television industry way back in 1974, and I started as a lineman, became a tower worker, and then went to work on some cable systems where I became a field engineer and built a couple of pretty large systems in North Jersey at the time. And when I was about 25 years old, I started my first company, which was a cable television contracting company. We did engineering, underground construction, design, that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. And that company actually went under in 87. I started in 81. We had offices in 4 states. We were based out of Jersey, but we had offices in Dallas, Virginia, Rhode Island, and Jersey. And we grew quicker than we were able to handle. And what happened was we just got out over our skis. Running a business with that many offices is almost like having 4 businesses. So fortunately or unfortunately, it went under. And on the other side of that, I saw that that was in 87, just when the telecommunications industry was being born. So I saw the opportunity in that industry, and rather than take a job, I figured I'd take another swing in entrepreneurialism, even though I just kind of proved to myself that I wasn't a very good one. At least that's what I thought. So I started a company called Cynet, and it started in cable television, but within 2 years, I migrated over into the telecommunications space. So I sold that a week before its 21st birthday, so built a successful company out of that. Took a lot of the lessons that I learned from the failed business to make the second one much more successful. And basically what we did was we went in and we designed and installed large computer and voice data and video networks. We did a lot of local area networks, a lot of wide area networks, and just really rode that wave of technology and innovation for about 21 years. And I got to a point where that part of the industry was kind of boring for me. I had built a company. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a manager. I had hired some really good people and turned them into partners. So a week before its 21st birthday, I sold the company to the management team to follow my real passion, which was I wanted to understand what changes were occurring. So that company was sold in 2005. And that was just 5 years after the millennium. And I was looking at the changes that businesses and leaders were having to face based upon the massive impact that technology was having on industry and changing that landscape. That was the beginning of the end of the industrial age and the beginning of what I call the technology and information age that we're now in. So, those changing dynamics really shifted a lot of things that were forcing leaders to build organizations that were more agile, more flexible. And then we also had a very independent group of we had probably about 4 or 5 of the most independent-minded generations in the history of humanity in the workforce, and none of them liked being told what to do. So that was pushing up against traditional leadership models. So when I left that company, I became a partner in a think tank for about 2 years, and that's what I did. I did a lot of research on what are the changes in the generations in the workforce, and what were the changes in the workplace, and what new mindsets, models, and methods for leadership and organization were we going to have to develop to be able to continue to be successful in this rapidly changing and drastically changed new age that we're in. So that led me on the journey that I'm on now. So that's how I got to the space that I'm at, which, the best way to describe me is, I'm a bit of a futurist, but because I've built companies, I'm also a realist. And I am a organizational and leadership development consultant, coach, trainer. And obviously I wrote a book on conscious leadership, which is really at the foundation of, I think, the new wave of leadership. People have to become much more conscious about how they interact with people to be able to build the organizations that we need to thrive in today's world.
So when you say
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So when you say conscious leadership, I guess you're kind of focusing more on like the intentional leadership of paying attention to what you're doing and focusing on the actual leadership point, not just building a product or sales or something like that.
Well, it's both that, but it's also about bringing a different level of consciousness. It's not only being aware of what you're doing, being conscious of what you're doing, but it's also about bringing a different level of consciousness into the workplace. So, for instance, if you look at traditional leadership models, command and control, top down, organizational designs are silos, promote separation between departments and bureaucracy. And that command and control top down is kind of an ego-based, or it creates an environment for leadership to be a bit more egotistical, more authoritarian, use a little more force. And that just doesn't play in today's world. The older generations like myself, I'm a boomer. I don't want to be told what to do without having input because I've been around. You've been around a lot. You want your input solicited. And the newest generations come into the workforce expecting to be heard. So conscious leadership is really about bringing in a different level of consciousness. So instead of leading kind of from that ego model, it's about acting as an elder. Sort of coming in, seeing the human in the human. We design our organizations like they're machines.
Yeah.
If you look at the org chart, it looks like an assembly line. And in reality, organizations are organisms. They're living, breathing, thinking organisms. And they're made up of living, breathing, thinking organisms. So if we look at the org chart and we believe that, we see we look at the organization kind of as a machine, then we have a tendency to see people as tools instead of the really creative human beings that they are. So in addition to doing the work I've done as a frontline entrepreneur and that kind of stuff, I've also been on a journey of expanding my consciousness. And, some people call that spirituality, but it's a little bit deeper than that for about the last 25 years. So I teach leaders how to bring a higher level of consciousness that's more respectful, and at the same time is able to create environments and cultures that hold one another more accountable than the command and control top-down does. So it's being aware of what you're doing, but also bringing a higher level of awareness into what you're doing.
Yeah. So, I read an article that you wrote earlier this week that was about the 5 aspects when it comes to conscious leaderships. And, you kind of just hit on one of them, the elder, but there's some other ones that I want to talk about too. One of them was the steward. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between those two and what the steward is?
Yeah. So the best way to describe a steward is to think of a gardener, right? A really effective gardener's got a plot of land, got a little piece there, and it has a whole variety of different types of plants in it. It has, maybe cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers, beans, corn, you name it, it's in there. And what a gardener does is it understands the nature of each of the plants, and it understands what they need to be able to prosper. One plant needs a certain amount of water, another plant needs maybe more or less. How much sun does it need? What type of nutrients in the soil, et cetera. So, and the gardener's job is to make sure that they create the conditions that promote the growth for each of those individual plants to maximize that. And if they do that well, then they have a great bounty, right? They have a great product. So as leaders, what we really need to do is we need to be understanding the people that work with us. What are their tendencies? What are their capabilities, their aptitudes, and what works well for them to motivate them and to get them engaged. And we need to be responsive to that. The command and control basically sends the message that if I'm the leader, you guys need to follow me. And that works, and you still need some of that. But in today's world, you need something more than just that. So today's leaders, the way I see it, are not at the top down. They're in the center. They're more like, I designed computer networks for 20 years. So they're more like a network manager. They're looking to see what do the people need, and how can I provide those resources to maximize their productivity. So in a very real way, I am in service of them to make sure that I'm maximizing the human capital and the collective genius of the team that I'm working with. I'm not subservient to them. I am in service of them, but at the same time, I'm also making sure that, we have order, and that there are the necessary consequences that are in place that, keep things in line, because a culture without consequences are chaos. And so you need a little bit of both, like a gardener needs to weed and needs to prune. And leaders are the same way, but the focus is, I understand the people in my organization, I understand their capabilities and what they need to help them be most successful. And that's what I'm in service of. So that's the steward part of it.
So let's take a step back when it comes to that. Let's take a step back and figure out how can we as leaders, let's say we're just now hearing this for the first time, we're kind of just now grasping, I'm a new leader, I'm a new manager of a team. And I realized that I need to learn about my people. How do I go about learning, like, what they need, what kind of communication style they are? What are some tips or pieces of advice that you have for new leaders out there to learn their team?
Well, one of the really cool things that I've seen about this work that I've done, I've created a whole body of work around over the last 18 years, is that the more people learn about it, and I tell them this, the more you learn about what it is I'm talking about, the more you'll realize how intuitive and how much you already know about it. You just didn't realize it. So, to answer your question, what's the best way that I can find out what they need and what they'll respond to? And the answer is sit down and talk to them. Just get them together, have what I call a hey man conversation. It's like, look, I'm coming in and I understand that, I can, I believe that if the more I know about you and what works for you, the better I can resource you, and the better we can work as a team and have a higher output and product. And again, it's not about being subservient. None of the stuff that I'm talking about is about woo-woo and hugging everybody and responding to everybody's sensitivities, et cetera. But it's about, really being smart and intelligent about understanding as much as you possibly can about the human resources that you're in charge of, making sure they're maximizing their performance. So you just sit down and talk with them. And at the same time, you share with them what it is that works for you. You increase that understanding about what it takes for you to work together as two human beings to be able to maximize performance. And you'd be amazed about, how much you can learn from that. In fact, real quick, I'll give this tool. This is a terrific tool for people to use to have that type of conversation. And I do it in some of the work that I do at a deep level, but it works a little bit on a shallower level. And that is, I ask them 3 questions. The first question is, if you could name 2 or maybe 3 things that if you could do more of in your job, you would be more productive, you would be more valuable to the company, and you would like your job more, what would those 2 things be? So that's one question.
Yep.
The next question is, if there were 2 or maybe 3, you want to keep it limited, things that if you had to do less of, that you could be more productive, increase your performance, and be happier, what would those things be? And then the third question is, if you could identify 2, maybe 3 things that you see that this company is doing that if they did it differently would increase performance and morale, what would those things be? And, you kind of preface that conversation with the fact that I don't have a magic wand, like you're not going to get all your wishes, but, give me some insight on what you see. And those 3 questions can really lead to some astounding discoveries and a closeness in the relationship you have with that person, because you're asking them questions, they're sharing information with you, and I've yet to see that not provide some really powerful results.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. I think that's great that you're talking about things that they can do, things that they can maybe stop doing, and some things that the company as a whole can do, because you're showing that you value their insight for everybody, but also you're interested in what their skills are and their individual things that they can improve on and reduce on. So I think that's really good.
Well, organizations are largely designed for a distant age. I mean, most morale issues come from, or a lot of them, I should say, come from poor organizational design that stifles the amount of activity and performance that the people could be providing. So, when I do my leadership training, I don't just do leadership training. I do leadership training and organizational design training, because to train leaders to be, Top Gun fighter pilots and then put them in a World War I biplane, they're just going to get shot out of the air and be frustrated. So we have to, as we improve the abilities of our leaders, we also have to improve the flexibility and the fluidity of our organizations, because those are, those are 2 legs that you need to move the organization forward.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the other aspects of conscious leadership. You mentioned in your article a little bit about the navigator. And I think that's really cool, because I like the idea of setting direction for your team and being intentional about that. Can you talk a little bit about what that role is?
Yeah, imagine yourself either the captain of the ship and you're up in the bridge, or back in the old days they put the person up in the crow's nest, right? So we have an obligation as leaders to make sure that we are aware of the conditions that we are not only in, but that we are sailing into, we're leading the people into. So the navigator is the one that's looking at the horizon and maybe a little bit past it, because, so much of what happens to us on a daily basis is based upon the conditions that we're in, and conditions change rapidly. So as the leader, we have our workforce who's working, and they have their projects and they have their initiatives and they have their tasks that they're doing on a day-to-day basis. So their field of vision is typically, maybe this week, this month, et cetera. And that's just not the way the world operates today and how fast it changes. That's not long enough viewpoint to be able to accurately steer your organization in a good direction. So as a navigator, we not only have to be looking ahead to be able to see what's coming our way, but the navigator just doesn't see what they see. They share what they see. They communicate it. So we have to see it. We have to share what we see with people. And then we have to speak to them about what do we need to do to be able to successfully steer into and through the conditions that we're facing. So somebody that's really looking and seeing what's coming down the pike and having conversations with the team to be able to make sure that if you need all hands on deck, you have all hands on deck. If the seas are quiet and people get to take a little bit of a rest, you can do that. But at the same time, you're looking out for storms, big waves, rogue waves, icebergs, and that kind of stuff. And then you're communicating with the group. Communication is the lubrication that keeps organizations moving forward. And if you don't do anything else other than communicate well with your team, that's one of the most important things you have to have at any level of leadership.
So how do we become better communicators for that team? Because that's one of the things that I've struggled with in the past is I'll get wrapped up with something and kind of forget that I need to share this information with the team. I need to ask the team what they're working on, what they're interested in, and I forget that. Is there a way that we can kind of put that on autopilot so we're continuously doing that and not getting lost?
No. And I'll tell you what I'm saying no to. I'm saying no to the autopilot. This, as a leader, one of the absolute most important things you have to be focused on every day with this new generation and in this work place that's so rapidly changing. And, AI is just going to kick everything into hyperspeed. It's going to be insane. So one of the things you have to do is you consciously have to be highly aware of how much are you communicating, and you don't want to over communicate. I'm not saying, just bug the crap out of people because people are busy, but you want to make sure that you have defined the meetings that you need to have and the frequency of them. Some meetings you just walk in, you stick your head in somebody's office, or you get, nowadays you get the morning Zoom room, and you just check in and, hey, what's everybody got going on today? And they're talking short-term stuff. Other times, there could be something where you have a new plan that you're putting in place, and then you have to meet regularly on that. Sometimes there is all of a sudden there's a drastically changing condition, or there's a new innovation, or somebody's got a new creative idea. And so depending upon your position and your team and your organization, your design on how you're going to have those conversations are going to be different. You customize them. You'll get a feel for what's too much and what's not enough. But the main thing that you want to establish in your culture, and this is very different than the way it was back in the old days, is that we have communications, we have constant conversations. If you look at organizations, we now look at them as departments. And, organizations have departments, and that's fine. But there's something that's happening at a much deeper level than that as us as humans in departments. And that is what I call tribal dynamics. Organizations are not a group of departments. Organizations are a tribe of tribes. And, when I built my companies, I had sales departments, I had engineering departments, I had construction departments, I had finance departments, I had HR departments. Each of those were a very different culture. Each of those were a very different tribe. They had different languages, they had different personalities, they did different jobs. And, somebody, the sense of humor and the rough and tumble style of the guys in construction was very different than the people in HR or in finance. So what you want to do, and when you think about tribes, back in the day, when we were all sitting around the fire and we had the tribal elder and we had the people that were all working in order to support the tribe, not just to take care of themselves, but to support the tribe. the way that those tribes survived was by speaking together. They didn't have departments. And what we have to do is we still need departments. They're important. But the way that we interact with one another has to be more conversational and more reflective of the tribal nature that is really deep in our DNA. We need to be able to create environments where conversations can flow. And somebody from one department might have an issue that's being caused by somebody in another one. And it doesn't have to go all the way up a food chain, up to a couple of different levels of managers, over, down a couple of different levels of managers to see if that important discussion can happen. So, when you think about it from a tribal standpoint, what type of conversations need to take place? How can I empower my people to have them, encourage them to have them, and yet still make sure that there's a level of people are paying attention to them being productive? And, for the most part, people are pretty smart. They don't want to talk about stuff that's not important, and they will self-regulate and self-design. People are really, really smart. So we have a tendency the command and control has a tendency to underestimate and undervalue the intelligence of what I call it the bigger know in a company. I know what I know, the team knows what they know, and together we have a bigger know. Mm-hmm. Collective genius and a collective energy that you just want pulsating through your organization, and bureaucracy and structured communications can really limit that. So we want to open that up. And there's a variety of ways you can do that. It takes a little bit of time, but once you understand the rules and the methods, they're really quite intuitive.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. I did want to talk a little bit about those methods some more if you have some time. I know you developed this 3-step process for transformation, the M3 model, the mindset model method. Can you talk a little bit more about what that is and what some of those methods are?
Yeah, this just came to me. I mean, I've been doing a deep dive research into this stuff for 18 years, and what I realized was that just a couple of years ago, I realized that we're in a place that has such exponential disruption and change from what it was even in the 90s, that change is not enough. To me, change is about taking an existing model and adapting it. We are in such a different world now that we can't continue to be the caterpillar. We can't be a different version of a caterpillar and thrive in today's world. We have to transform into something else. So there's a difference between how you change and how you transform. Transform is massive. And as I was looking at that, I realized, and I've gone through a couple transformations in my own life, and I know how hard they were. But what I realized, and then I've studied transformation, I realized there's 3-step process that is part of every type of transformation. And transformation, again, is not just being a different version of what you were before, but it's going from the caterpillar to the butterfly. And the first step is that you need a new mindset. So you need to, so real quick example here is, so the typical mindset of a leader is I have to be at the top, I have to hold people accountable, and I got to kind of drive this thing, and authority and kind of power are my trump cards, right? Well, in this new world, the new mindset has to be that I am about collaboration. I am about communication. I'm about facilitation. That's what the modern leader is. Command and control limits too much and is too slow, and frankly creates too dumb of an organization to thrive in the environment we're in. So I need a new mindset where the leader is a communicator, a collaborator, and a facilitator. And I am of service of that collective genius, that bigger know. Step one. And I have to buy into that wholly. It'll be tricky making the transition, but I have to hang on to that. Next step is you need a new model. You need a new model for how you view your organization. And I just mentioned that a little bit earlier. Instead of seeing my organizations as silos and departments and hierarchies, We still need hierarchies, but just not as strict. I see my organization as a tribe of tribes. And I understand that there are three things that drive performance, and those are tribal dynamics, knowledge networks, which you can call a team, but instead of just assembling a bunch of people together, I design them like a computer network. You design them to be a knowledge network, and culture. So tribal dynamics, knowledge networks, and healthy cultures are the new model for what it is, the type of organization I'm trying to build. I build them with them, and I support them. And then once you have that model, you actually need new methods that you can use on a day-to-day basis, right on the front lines, because if you can't operationalize this stuff, it's not going to do you any good at all as a leader. Platitudes, academic theories, all that kind of stuff, they're nice, but when you're in the front lines, they're kind of worthless. They're almost a liability. So you need methods that work. So what are the new leadership methods? And what it is I talk a lot about in the leadership training that I do is, first of all, you need to recognize that bigger no exists out there, that collective genius and collective energies. You need to go in and you need to open it up. You need to activate it. You need to keep it from breaking down. You need to constantly build it. So you ask and invite questions of the network, and then you listen to what they're saying. You coach people through things. You don't criticize people. And you have very specific new leadership methods that you're doing on a day-to-day basis with individual interactions that opens the individual up to participate and operate under the new model, which manifests the mindset that you have. So those three steps are really important for any type of transformation you go through. You need a new mindset of who it is you're going to be in the world and what you're going to do. You need a new model that will be able to that you can put together, that will work, that will help to facilitate that. And then you need specific methods that you do on a day-to-day basis that operate within that. And you put that together and you work on it. And, you just can't make this stuff up. That's why I spent years developing the training program around that. And that's actually what won the bronze medal for Innovator of the Year award from the International Business Association. So it's tricky, but once again, I do training and certification classes around it, and the more you see of it, the more you realize how much you already knew.
Yeah.
And, in that training, I get into things that are beyond the physical. I get into, the power of energetics into as a leader, and how quantum physics impacts your ability to lead. And we get pretty deep into stuff, but it's all stuff that I use in my practice. I built my entire practice using this stuff. So now what I look to do is teach other people now that I've proved it. A lot of people are struggling with how are we going to build our organizations in this new model. So I help people significantly shorten those learning curves from years to a couple of months.
Nice. So that's a great segue into how can people connect with you online, pick up a copy of your book, and learn more about this M3 method and how they can maybe help, get your help to implement this at their company?
Yeah, well, you can go to my website. It's jeffreydeckman.com. And, one of the things that I'm really a big proponent on is teaching what I've learned. So there's a ton of resources in there. You've read some of my articles. I have a YouTube channel, and I speak a lot about the type of processes I use. So you can go on there. You can email me directly. I respond to emails, and that's jeffrey@jeffreydeckman.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I Google well. I'm a Forbes coach, so you can Google my name at Forbes.com, and you'll see several articles I've got published through them. And I'm not hard to find. And my book is on Amazon. And anybody listening, I have a PDF version of my book that I'd be willing to offer any of your guests if they would like it. Just send me an email at jeffreydeckman.com, and I'll send you a copy of the PDF version. It's best if you have the real book because it's a workbook. And that book is a combination of helps you to grow your level of consciousness as a leader, and also helps you to view the new model and see some of the new methods of this new leadership, conscious leadership methodology that I've put together. It's a really, really powerful book.
Yeah, I also noticed on Amazon, if you're like me and you're a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, you can actually check it out for free, which is pretty awesome. Jeffrey, thanks so much for coming on the show. I'll link all that up in the show notes too at geekleader.com. So if people just go there, they can link over to your website, your LinkedIn, and the book and all that good stuff. So again, thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. I hope I had value to anybody listening.
If you enjoyed that episode, please leave a rating and review in Apple Podcasts. I'd greatly appreciate that. And also, don't forget to check out merch. We have some T-shirts that I've designed that are on at geekleader.com. You can click on the merchandise section there and check that out. And also, don't forget about the books from our guests. So if you like this guest and other guests that have written books, please go ahead and check that out at geekleader.com. I would greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure they would too.